Hi everyone, this is WWD8 and you're most welcome for it. Last video we talked about percentile and we saw our percentile divides our dataset into 100 different parts. Today we want to talk about quartiles that divides our dataset into 4 equal parts. Let's say we have this dataset showing the number of students in 10 classrooms. If I draw a number line like this number line will contain 100% of the dataset. That means it contains all the data values starting from the smallest to the largest, arranged in ascending order. Now if I'm to draw 3 lines dividing this dataset into equal parts, remember our dataset is actually sorted from smallest to biggest. That means the first line will be Q1, that is quartile 1. The second line will be Q2, that's quartile 2. And then the third line will be Q3, that's quartile 3. Now those 3 lines divides our dataset into 4 equal parts. This is the first part, this is the second part, this is the third part, and this is the fourth part. Each part contains 25% of the dataset. So Q1, Q2, and Q3, those are the quartiles. Let's switch on to Excel and we get to know more about quartiles. Now quartile is expressed mathematically like this. Quartile is equals to k into n plus 1 divided by 4. Now this formula here gives us the quartile position. The QK is actually the k's quartile position. N is the total number of values in the dataset, and then K is the value corresponding to the quartile needed. Like for example, 1 for quartile 1, 2 for quartile 2, and 3 for quartile 3. Now in Excel, there are actually 2 functions that are used to calculate quartile. We have the Quartile.Exc function, Ex means exclusive, and the Quartile.Inc function, Inc means inclusive. So we have the Quartile.exclusive and Quartile.inclusive. The 2 functions result slightly to different answers if the dataset is not large enough, but if the dataset is large enough, they tend to give us the same answer. That's because they use 2 different formulas to calculate the quartile positions. The Quartile.Exc uses this formula here, and the Quartile.Inc uses this formula here to get the respective quartile positions. The difference between the 2 functions is that Quartile.Exc actually excludes the minimum value and the maximum value, while Quartile.Inc includes the minimum value and the maximum value. We shall get to understand more about that when we start doing examples down here. I also want you to realize that Quartile.Exc actually uses the same formula as the universal formula here to get to the quartile position. Now let's scroll down and we get to know how we can calculate quartiles in Excel. In order for us to understand quartile well, we're going to first calculate the quartile position using these formulas here. Then we shall also calculate the quartile using this formula down here based on these positions. Then later on we shall see how we can calculate the quartiles using Excel functions. Now all these formulas here needs you to first calculate n, which is the total number of values in your dataset. So I've used the count function to count the total number of values here, escape, and there are 10. Now let's start calculating the quartile position. Now for our k, the first quartile is going to be 1, the second quartile is going to be 2, and the third quartile is going to be 3. Now for the minimum value, we are going to use k as 0, and 4 is going to give us the maximum value. I also want you to realize that the first quartile, or Q1, is actually the same as the 25th percentile. The second quartile is actually the same as the 50th percentile, which is also the same as the median. And then the third quartile is the same as the 75th percentile. We're going to prove that later on. So I'm going to click on this cell and use this formula here to get the position for Quartile.exclusive. So I'm going to do equals to, first put there the k, so I'm going to click on this. This is going to be our first k. We're going to copy it down to go to other k's. So I'm going to do k times, I'm going to put in bracket, open bracket. Now our n is going to be this. Now because I'm going to copy this formula down, I want the n to be locked onto this cell as I copy my formula down. So I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it, plus 1. So I'm going to close my bracket and I need to divide it by 4. So when I control enter, now for k equals to 0, when you use this formula here, you get 0 because from our dataset, if you see this dataset here, there is no value at the 0th position. The first value is starting from the first position, not at the 0th position. That's even the reason why Quartile.exclusive actually exclude the minimum value. But if I'm to come here and copy my formula down, you can see that for the first quartile, we need to move to the 2.75 position. Also for the maximum value, there's actually no 11th position in our dataset. So the Quartile.exclusive will also exclude the maximum value. Now for the second quartile, which is this one, if we were to just see it from this dataset, that means we need to move to the 5th position. If the position was exactly 5, That means we should move to the 5th position, come to the results, pick this value, and then put it here. But because it is 5.5 position, we need to move to the 5.5 position, then we get the value and we bring it here. So that means the value is going to be between 68 and 70. So the value is in the middle here. We shall see how we can get to that value. But these are the position for the Quartile.exclusive. Let's also use this formula here and we calculate the position for Quartile.inclusive. So I'm going to click on this cell and do equals to K, which is going to be these values here. I need to multiply it times, in bracket, N is going to be this. So since I'm also going to copy my formula down, I want the N to be locked into that cell. So I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it. So I need to do minus 1, close my bracket, divide by 4, plus 1. Now when I control enter, it's getting the minimum value from the first position. But when I'm to copy my formula down, you can see the position where we're getting the first quartile and the third quartile is actually different. Then also for the maximum value, it's giving us 10, that's the last position in our dataset. So this formula here, whenever you use K as 0, it will always give you number 1, that is the first value in your dataset. And when you use K as 4, it will always give you the last number in your dataset. That's the reason why it's actually possible for it to give you the minimum value and the maximum value. What we have calculated here is actually just the position where the quartile is located from your dataset. Now for us to get to the quartile or get the values that is corresponding to these positions here, we need to use this formula down here. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. The value which is at the integer position, like for example, if I'm to come to this second quartile, the value which is at the integer position of QK, that means the value which is at the 5th position, that will be this value here, plus the difference between the value after the integer position. The value after the integer position is 70, minus the value at the integer position, which is this value here, then times the decimal part. Now the decimal part for this case is 0.5. For this case, it will be 0.75. So let's start with Quartile.exclusive. So I'm going to click on this cell and do equals to, this is telling me position 0. So there's actually no position 0 in our data set. So for our case, let's just put NA because that one is actually not available. Now when we come to the first quartile, equals to the value which is at the integer position. Now the integer position for the first quartile is 2. If I'm to come to our data set, position 2 is here and the value which is at the integer position is 54. So I'm going to click on 54 and we need to add to it plus, in bracket, the difference between the value after the integer position, that is the value after the integer position, minus the value at the integer position. So the value after the integer position is 57 minus the value at the integer position, which is also 54. So I'm going to close this bracket. Now we need to multiply it times 0.75 and that will give us the first quartile. If I hit enter, you can see for the first quartile, the position is 2.75 and the value is 56.25. So the value is between 54 and 57, somewhere between there. Now for the second quartile, which is also the same as the median or the 50th percentile, we're also going to do the same using this formula here. So I'm going to do equals to the value which is at the integer position. The integer position is 5. So the 5th position is here and the value is here. Then we need to add to it, open bracket, the difference between the value after that is 7 minus the same 65, close bracket, then we need to multiply it by 0.5. So when I enter, you can see the second quartile is 69. Now let's calculate the third quartile. When I click on this cell, I'm going to do equals to the value which is at the integer position. The position is 8.25. So I'm going to come to the 8th position. The value which is at the 8th position is 84. Then I need to add to it, in bracket, the difference between the value after the integer position, which is 87, minus the value at the integer position, which is 84. I'm going to close my bracket. Then I need to multiply it by the integer part, which is 0.25. When I hit enter, you can see I'm getting 84.75. Now for the Quartile.exclusive, it's telling us that the maximum value is found at the 11th position, which is practically not true because our dataset is actually ending at the 10th position. So we're also going to put NA for the maximum value. Now let's calculate the one for the Quartile.inclusive. So I'm going to click on this cell. It's telling us that the minimum value is found at the first position. Then if first do equals to, So I'm simply going to come to the first position and get this value here. When I hit enter, that one is going to be our minimum value. Now for the first quartile, we are going to use the same method we have used here. So equals to the value which is at the integer position. Remember, we are now using these positions here, no longer this one. These are the position for the Quartile.inclusive. So the integer position is going to be the third position. So I'm going to come to the third position here and get the value which is 57. And then I need to add to it in bracket the difference between the value after the integer position, which is 57, minus the value at the integer position, which is also 57. Then I need to close my bracket, then times the integer part, which is 0.25. When I hit enter, you can see I get 57. Now let's get the second quartile. I'm going to do equals to, the position is 5.5, so I'm going to come to the fifth position. The value which is at the fifth position is 68. Then I need to add to it in bracket the difference between the value after the fifth position minus the value at the fifth position, close bracket. Then we need to multiply it times the integer part, which is 0.5. The position that we got when we used the Quartile.inclusive formula and the one for the Quartile.exclusive is actually the same. That means the value must also be the same. So when I hit enter, you can see we are also getting 69. So the third quartile, I'm going to do equals to, the position is 7.75. So I'm going to come to the seventh position, get the value at the seventh position or the integer position. Then I'm going to add to it in bracket this value here, 84 minus 82, close bracket. Then I'm going to multiply it times 0.75. When I hit enter, then also for the maximum value, Quartile.inclusive is telling us that it's found at the 10th position. So I'm going to do equals to, come to our data set, come to the 10th position and pick this value, hit enter. Now you can see, now that we have used the maths formulas to calculate the quartile positions and even the quartile, let's see how we can do it using Excel functions. So I'm going to click on this cell. I'm going to start with Quartile.Exc. So I'm going to do equals to, the function we use is called Quartile.Exc. When I see it highlighted in blue, I'm going to hit tab to select it. Now it needs the array and then the quartile. Now for the array, I'm going to highlight my entire values here. Since I'm going to copy my formula down, I'm also going to lock it using the F4 key. Then comma, for the quartile, you can see we having 1 for first quartile, 2 for median or the 50th percentile, that is the second quartile, then 3 for third quartile. But for our case, I'm simply going to give it the values for K, which is this one here. So when I close my bracket and control enter, so you can see for the Quartile.Exc, it's giving us an error for the minimum value. But when I'm to copy my formula down like this, you can see for the maximum value also we are getting an error. But when it comes to the first quartile, we are getting the same results as the maths formula we have done here. Then also for the second quartile or the median, we are getting the same value. Then also for the third quartile, we are getting the same value. Now I've told you that there are two functions in Excel that's used to calculate the quartile, but actually there are three. Now the quartile function, as you can see, it's now having this yellow triangle. It's now the compatibility mode. That means it's just there for compatibility with earlier version of Excel, but if you have later versions of Excel, these two functions are actually released to replace it. But let's see how it works. So I'm going to down arrow until I get to it and hit tab to select it. It still needs the same argument. The array is going to be this range of values here. So I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it, comma. Now for the quartile, now you can see this time around, it's giving us all the four options. 0 for the minimum value, 1 for first quartile, 2 for second quartile, and then 3 for third quartile, and 4 for the maximum value. Now instead of selecting it from here, I already have those values here. So I'm going to click on this first one here, then close my bracket. When I control enter, you can see it is giving us the minimum value. When I copy my formula down, you can see it's also giving us the maximum value. Now the quartile function and the Quartile.Inc actually works the same way. They use the same formula to calculate quartile. So let's prove that. So I'm going to click on this cell and do the Quartile.Inc equals to Quartile.Inc, tab to select it. It also needs the array. So the array is this values here. F4 to lock it, comma. You can see it's also giving us all the 5 options here. but I already have those options here, so I'm going to click on the first one, close my bracket, control enter. You can see it's giving us the minimum value, and then I'm going to copy my formula down. Now you can see the quartile function and the Quartile.Inc actually giving us the same answer. That means they use the same formula, but the Quartile.Exe actually uses a different formula. Now with that knowledge, let's scroll down and we see an example. Now here we have the April sales data. We want to get the first quartile, second quartile, and the third quartile. So I'm going to start by using Quartile.Exe. So equals to Quartile.Enc, tab to select it. The array is going to be these values here. I'm going to hit F4 to lock it, comma, then for the quartile, I'm going to give it this value. So when I close my bracket, control enter, you can see for the minimum value is giving us an error. But when I copy my formula down, you can see the first quartile, second quartile, and the third quartile, you're getting these values. Let's also do Quartile.Inc equals to Quartile.Inc, tab to select it. The array is going to be these values here. I'm also going to lock it using the F4 key since I'm going to copy my formula down, comma. Then for the quartile, I'm also going to give it this number. Close my bracket, control enter. You can see when I copy my formula down, I'm getting the minimum value and the maximum value. So the Quartile.Inclusive is including for me the minimum value and the maximum value, but for the exclusive, we are getting an error. Now I've used the min function here to get the minimum value and the max function here to get the maximum value. Now I also want to prove to you that the first quartile is actually the same as the 25th percentile, the second quartile is actually the same as the 50th percentile or the median, and then the third quartile is the same as the 75th percentile. Now let's come here and we get the 25th percentile. So I'm going to do equals to percentile. We're going to start by percentile.exclusive tab. The array is going to be the same values here. I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it, comma. Now for the k, I'm going to give it 0.25. When you're using Excel functions, the k only takes the values between 0 and 1. So if it is a 25th percentile, you need to give it 0.25. So I'm going to give it 0.25. When I close my bracket and control enter, now when I copy my formula down, of course I'm getting an error here because there is no k here. But for the 25th percentile, you can see it's the same as the first quartile. The 50th percentile is the same as the second quartile, and the 75th percentile is the same as the third quartile. Let me also do the percentile.inclusive, and we also see equals to percentile.inclusive. Tab to select it. The array is going to be these values here. F4 to lock it, comma. Now my formula is actually covering up the value here, so I'm going to use my arrow key to get to that cell. So I'm going to right arrow to get to this cell where I'm having my k. I'm going to close my bracket, control enter. You can see the k is 0.25, that is the 25th percentile. So when I copy my formula down, you can see that somehow, even if there is no k here, it's giving us the minimum value. So it's taking this empty cell as 0. That's why it's giving us the minimum value here. And also the 25th percentile is actually the same as the first quartile. The 50th percentile is actually the same as the second quartile. And then the 75th percentile is actually the same as the third quartile. Now, I'm going to highlight these two values and then delete. I also want to show you that the second quartile is actually the same as the 50th percentile and also the same as the median. So I'm going to click on this cell and do equals to. This time around, I'm going to use the median function. Tab to select it. Now the value, I'm going to get the median of this. When I hit tab, you can see that the 50th percentile is actually the same as the median, which is also the same as the second quartile. So let's scroll down and we see our last example, which is this one. Now we have this end of semester examination marks. Let's first click on this control down arrow. We have 100 different marks here. As you can see, I'm going to control up arrow. Now that data set is actually larger than the one we saw above. Let's see if the two functions is going to give us the same answer. Click on this cell. We shall also get what's always referred to as the 5-number summary. So let's start with Quartile.Exe. So equals to Quartile.Exe, tab to select it. The array, I'm going to click on this cell, control shift down arrow, F4 to lock it since I'm going to copy my formula down, comma. Then for the quartile, I'm going to give it these values here. close bracket, control enter. Of course, I'm going to get an error for the minimum value. Then when I copy my formula down, I'm also going to get an error for the maximum value. Let's also do Quartile.Inclusive. So I'm going to click on this cell, equals to Quartile.Inclusive, tab to select it. The array, I'm going to click on this cell, control shift down arrow, F4 to lock it, comma, and for the quartile, I'm going to give it these values. Close bracket, control enter. You can see it's giving us the minimum value. Then I'm going to copy my formula down. Now I've also used the min function here to get the minimum value, and also the max function here to get the maximum value. This one is giving me dollars. That's actually just number formatting. I'm going to highlight it. Then when I come to the home tab, from the number group, it's saying currency, but I'm going to click on this drop down arrow, then wipe away the number formatting using general. When I click on general, you can see we are back to max now. So the minimum max is 25, then the maximum max is 100. Let me also click on this cell. Now this time around, I'm going to use the format painter. So I'm going to click on the cell that's having this formatting. Then when I come to the home tab, from the clipboard group, this is the format painter. When I click on the format painter, you can see this paint brush. Now this one only copy the formatting and it pastes it to where you are going to click. So I'm going to highlight these two cells and leave. And you can see it has got the formatting here and it has put it here. It has now wiped away the number formatting of currency. Now let's see. Up here we were having only 10 values. So the Quartile.Exc and Quartile.Inc was actually giving us different answers for first quartile and third quartile, as you can see from here. This is different from this is different from this. But when I'm to scroll down to this example here, we were having 100 different values here. And then we can see, now I forgot to remove this number formatting here. Come here, general. So you can see the Quartile.Exc and the Quartile.Inc is actually giving us the same answer. That's because this dataset is actually large. So if the dataset is actually large enough, the two functions will tend to give you the same answer. Now for me, I always prefer using Quartile.Inc because it gives me the 5 number summary. It includes for me the minimum value and the maximum value, so giving me the 5 number summary. Yeah, that is it for Quartile in Excel. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, and if you found this video interesting, give it a like, then you share it with your friends. This is a video where we talked about percentile. You can click on it, then you go and watch it. Until next video, WWD 9, then we meet again. Thank you.